I covered this a little bit on Wednesday. I like to peek forward as much as possible. And really this week, well, two things. One is the week before spring break, which makes everything damn difficult. And I do take that into account. But two, this is the first real week we're going to start on our sort of final unit, our final paper, which again, we have a minute to figure out what we're going to do for that, what we're going to write about, all that stuff. But we got to start that conversation now. The best way I know to start the conversation is to just brainstorm possibilities, right? Most, if not all of you right now are kind of like, I don't even know what he's talking about, right? So we need to push that a little more into, hopefully by the end of today, you have some clue as to what you might focus on here in the coming weeks. Because you all get to choose your own text. How did I forget that word? All right. So for instance, what I mean by this, I just want to brainstorm for a couple minutes. We talked last time about the controversy surrounding Ansari. If you missed that class, there's a recording obviously. I have a presentation about some things he was accused of, which he did cop to, but there was this whole thing on Twitter a couple years ago to do with Ansari, and he got canceled for a little while, and the conversation we kind of had last time was whether or not he should be allowed back, what the reaction to that information says about us. And of course, that's the conversations I want you to have in your papers. What does any of this, whatever you end up focusing on, say about us as a people, a society, a culture? Okay. I've crossed out Ansari because he was our example, and God knows we've talked about him enough this semester, right? So no one's writing about Ansari for this paper. I just want to make that clear. That was the example. Other examples I gave in the prompt, I mentioned flat Earth, and I'm not sure I'm spelling that right actually. I think there's no U. And QAnon, so pick your favorite conspiracy theory website or group, and you can think about what the hell those people are doing. Why we live in a world all of a sudden where, I mean, because conspiracy theories have always existed. But here lately, in the past couple of years, it really seems like some of that has taken off. So much so that you have guys like Kyrie Irving, if you don't know who that is, famous basketball player, famously claimed that he was a flat earther at one point. Now, granted, this is a guy, he can kind of think whatever he wants because his thoughts don't so much matter. He's very good at basketball, and he's got a pretty sweet life, I imagine, as a result of that. But it's a little troubling when a guy like that, especially maybe a guy that some people look up to, you know, for all kinds of reasons, comes out and says, yeah, the earth isn't round. That feels like it's symptomatic of maybe some larger issue, you know. So you can talk about something like this. I'm curious, your homework was to post a discussion post with at least one idea of what you might write about, but of course I encouraged you guys to pick several. I didn't want anyone to be super sure coming into today necessarily. And I'm just curious. It could be what you posted in the discussion post, or it could be something you're thinking about right now. Any sort of online phenomenon. It could be someone who's been canceled. It could be some kind of movement, conspiracy or otherwise, you know. Ansari, for instance, was linked to the Me Too movement for pretty obvious reasons, both before and after his controversy. I'm just curious what you guys got kicking around in your heads. I want to talk about that for a couple minutes. Your hand up, I can't tell. Yes, ma'am.
The Pixar theory.
One more time?
The Pixar theory.
The Pixar theory. Oh God, I'm scared. Okay. I don't know this one. What, enlighten us, please. What,
So it's basically the way the original timeline of the movies all released. And people are saying it either starts with Brave or ends with Brave.
Okay.
And it really starts with the good dinosaur, then it goes into, just had this conversation the other day. But basically it goes from like normal human interaction, the good dinosaur, the Incredibles, then it goes to Toy Story, and Wall-E,
Right.
Then it goes to Cars. Then it goes to Monsters University, Monsters Inc., and then Brave.
What's the upshot of this timeline? Like, why are people so interested?
Because the witch in Brave is actually Boo from Monsters Inc.
Like, it's voiced by the same person?
No, like they believe like the character is Boo.
Okay. Oh, I've only a scant seen that movie. I haven't seen a lot of those movies you're saying. They came out when I was in like high school and college with it. Okay. Well, I was fully prepared for you to say this is like, sure, is there, but what I'm saying is, why are people so interested in this theory?
Because
is it meant to?
Disney hasn't confirmed or denied anything, and they keep edging it on as if everyone's correct.
Sure.
So everyone's trying to find the right answer.
Sure.
And it's the way the world corresponds to each other, it makes us think they're alluding to what's going to happen in the future.
That's kind of what I was. So you're saying, I guess I'm honestly asking, are you saying these people think that Pixar somehow has the book on what's going to happen in the real world? And that's stupid.
Right.
But okay. Yeah, you'll hear things like that. I mean, a really common one, I mean, this is sort of maybe associated. It's still a thing, but it definitely was when I was younger. The Simpsons, they always predict the future, and like people have fun with it, but the idea that maybe they're connected somehow to some secret knowledge, some secret society, is one idea. The other idea is they've made thousands of episodes, and the law of averages would dictate you're going to be right a couple times when you make thousands and thousands of episodes. But okay, maybe I'll put a big maybe on this one, like, because I still want to know what it says about us as a people, a society, a culture. It sounds like you might be able to get into that. I mean, I don't know enough about it. I would worry a little that you would get really in the weeds with like the stuff that doesn't strictly apply to us, which is all the movies. But if you were able to concentrate on, I guess, the crazy people that subscribe to this notion, that brings me back to our earlier conversation about critical thinking, by the way, and the lack of it. But maybe I'd have to know more about it. Okay, interesting first shot there. Yeah, what's up?
I have a question.
Sure.
What is the second one under flat Earth? What is that?
QAnon?
Yeah, what's that?
You haven't heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
Oh, you sweet boy. Okay. You know what? One of your classmates actually approached me today and didn't know what that is either. Which I guess is a good thing, in a way. Also means you guys don't watch the news, but it's kind of okay. So, how to do this quickly? It's a conspiracy theorist group. Started on Reddit, got really big. For instance, a lot of the people that stormed the Capitol a couple months ago now were QAnon folks. They thought, I mean, again, I can't say all of them, but a lot of them, they thought that when Biden was inaugurated, what would really happen, and this is just an example of their theories, what would really happen, it was like a sting operation from Trump. He would come in and arrest everyone, including Biden, for their roles in like child pornography rings and cannibalism. And when that didn't happen, they felt they'd somehow been betrayed, so they had to storm the Capitol. Yeah, they think a lot of their conspiracy, that's usually how conspiracy theorists work. But again, all that's interesting and alarming. But the question for a group like this, or a group like this, again, is what does it say about us as a people, a society, a culture, that we have not just people who think those things, but that they gained followers. So for instance, I gave this example to Miles the other day. I'm trying to remember it now. It was something like, it was that. So the theory I gave you about Biden, like all those people being arrested at his inauguration because Trump is like this secret agent for them. When that didn't happen, a lot of people left the group because that's how evidence works, right? You think a thing, you think, especially something like that, like that's how the world works. That's foundational to your worldview. When it doesn't happen, a lot of people would say, oh, I guess we were wrong, and they left. A lot of people stayed and doubled down and then went and stormed the Capitol and other shit like that, right? And again, I'm like, what does it say about us that we have a lot of people right now who, when faced with a reality, when faced with this, what you thought that's not true, right? They're like, nah, you're part of it. That's somehow like it. You know what I'm saying? That says a lot about where we're at as a society. So questions like that, I would, and possibly into Pixar in a way. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of bad, but
okay.
That I have to ask this. But are we allowed to pick and write something that's kind of controversial, as long as we speak about it in a normal, level-headed manner?
I mean, you're gonna have to tell me what it is, man.
I mean, I'm just saying in general.
I
mean, it's not something like, as long as it's not like something huge, big bad, but something that there's lots of different views on, obviously.
I mean, I don't mind that. Again, what we're not doing, just so I'll probably say this several times. What we're not doing, as denoted by the prompt, is writing any kind of a reclamation project. So whether you agree or disagree with something like QAnon, which, by the way, if you agree with it, people should read more books. But anyway, that's not what the assignment is, right? Like that's not what we're doing. So even if you pick something, as you say, controversial, like in some people's heads, bringing this up at all would be controversial, right? That's not what you're not even entertaining whether or not it's true or right or wrong. You're talking about, here's the thing that happened, or here's the thing that people believe, what have you. Now, what does the fact that happened, or that people believe that, say about us as a people, a society, a culture, right? So again, like the flat earth scenario, I like that too, because that's a little funnier, right? QAnon, people like shot people, like that was real, okay? Flat earth, you're just like, well, they're just dumb. It's 2021. If you're not sure whether or not the earth's flat, you could like legit right now tune into a satellite. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of crazy. But some people, more than a few, believe it ardently. Like, again, then the question is like, well, fucking how and why? Like, how have we, as a culture, made our culture to where people like that can thrive, you know? Questions like that. Yes, ma'am.
Would the Illuminati be sorry.
That one's kind of old. Again, that's when I said at the start of all this, conspiracy theories have existed forever. That's one that has existed forever. I would say maybe again, but at the same time, like a lot of these folks think something like that. Like basically, most people that believe things like the QAnon stuff already thought the Illuminati stuff was, you know, so they get kind of folded in. So I would rather you try to stick to something a little more current, because again, for instance, QAnon legit got popular on Reddit, you know. So even the fact, like, I don't know if people know what Reddit is, but it's like kind of underground, super nerdy, not very moderated, at least for most of its history. And all those seem like good things, right? When we talk about free speech, like that's kind of foundational to our country. The freest of free speech is not moderated. But then, again, what possibilities does that open up? Well, it might, depending on what you found, open up possibilities for asshats like that. You know, like it just... Anyway. And again, we don't have to just do conspiracy theories. We can do any social media movement, moment. Can be a conspiracy theory, but I'm just curious what other things you guys have kicking around in your heads right now. Yes, ma'am.
What about the Wayfair conspiracy where they said they were selling children, but in all reality they actually weren't?
I didn't hear most of what you just said, I'm sorry.
So there was a Wayfair conspiracy where they would charge a large amount.
I heard about this.
Yeah.
Because the furniture had like names.
Yeah, they had like children's names in the...
They just had human names.
Yeah, and they were like, those are missing children.
Yeah. I know a little bit about that. I know a little bit about all this just because, I mean, I can't be fucked to look into something like that. Because again, as soon as I hear the synopsis, I'm like, oh, those people are dumb. But yeah, that's a thing. I guess some people thought it was children. The one I heard was like, because it was all women's names, they thought it was like sex trafficking.
They said it was the children who were kidnapped or being sold in whatever pieces. I don't know how you could fit a child into a tiny dresser.
Well, it's not. It's very silly. But sure. Again, I mean, weirdly, in a way, definitely these could be talked about in a similar fashion, but even flat Earth could be talked about in a similar way. Because what we're saying is, the whole world, is meeting you with all this evidence. Like, okay, man, we all have ideas. Can we all own real quick that 3 out of every 10 of our ideas are pretty stupid? Like, you ever have a moment during the day, you're doing something, you're like, oh, that was really dumb, I'm glad I didn't do that. You know, like, because we're fallible. People here and here and here are met with, hey man, there's a whole bunch of stuff that says you're like super wrong. I don't know if you saw any of that. They're like, yeah, I saw it. That's part of the problem. You're in on it too. It's like, what the So again, yeah, any of these could work in a similar fashion for sure. Other things, other than conspiracy theories, for now, because we got a good number of those. Somebody was canceled, or again, some movement online to like do something or not do something, or tell somebody you really felt a certain way. By the way, and I'll come to you real quick, this doesn't bode well for your homework. But anyway, yeah, what's up?
The younger generation of Gen Z canceling Eminem because of his lyrics in the past. This is actually pretty recent. This was probably like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
They were trying to cancel Eminem for his lyrics, and the older generations are like, you can't do that. And yeah.
Specifically, like I definitely don't care about Eminem, but
there's just a lot of his songs are kind of just not appropriate for children to be listening to, because he talks about like date rape, drugs, and.
Okay. Well, I mean, to be fair, what rap is for children? I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just,
But people are like, he should be canceled because everything he used to rap about back in the day is bad and illegal. And I was like, he made a song that legitimately said, "Do not take me seriously."
Yeah. Well, okay. This is an attached idea. This isn't a text. But there is kind of this notion that maybe part of what we're doing with all the canceling is like we're trying to make the current day, which is one thing, but especially when you apply it to the past, we're trying to make it antiseptic, like almost like you're taking bleach to the past and just saying no bad things can ever like survive, right? We're going to forget about all that stuff. And obviously there's some pushback on that. I almost qualified Eminem as gangster rap simply because, I mean, he's connected to Dr. Dre and all that stuff. I was in high school in the early 2000s, so I do know about some of this. But here again, I would just be like, I mean, I don't want to sound like one of the idiots that's like, well, where does it stop? But if how you're describing it is accurate, well, again, the question is like, well, are you going to cancel Dr. Dre or Tupac or fucking any of those people, right? Like rap, especially in the 90s, is super misogynistic, to say the least. It's crazy misogynistic. So it's I'm not saying it's right, but it also is a marker of the time, right? So it's kind of, it's an interesting conversation for sure. Yeah, I mean, that would work. Okay. She's carrying the class. What's up?
So you know Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, right?
This is very recent. I heard they changed the name to Potato Head. I heard people were upset by this.
Well, the thing is,
and then people got counter upset about them being upset. Is that accurate?
Yeah, because people were like, they don't have genitalia, so they shouldn't have a gender.
Yeah.
And people were like, no, Mr. Potato Head has a mustache, so it's a Mr. And then the company was just like, we're just going to say Potato Head and leave it alone. And then people got upset.
Yeah. I mean, well, I will say, okay.
I just thought it was a toy. I didn't know it was that serious.
Well, here's the thing, and you're right, and I mean, some people would say wrong. Like here's what it is. Absolutely, it's just a toy, and absolutely, anyone being up in arms one way or the other is kind of like, dude, you need real problems. You know what I'm saying? And that might be an important question. If you were to write, I never thought I'd say this. If you were to write a paper on Potato Head, one of the questions might be, well, how do we come to the point as a society, like that's what we're doing right now, okay? As a society, we've stood up and said, we need to hash this out right now. Family meeting, Potato Head. What does that say about us and our priorities, right?
They're in the wrong place.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you, I mean, we get more complex than that. We dig into it a little more. You find articles, blah, blah, blah. But absolutely, it seems like, I mean, to me anyway, it would suggest that. But then, of course, you would have to define what wrong place is. Aside from that, some people would say, well, it's not about, again, I can't believe I'm saying this, it's not about Potato Head, it's about what Potato Head, I swear I'm trying to not laugh. It's about what Potato Head means, right? Because they are, both sides of that conversation are trying to have a larger conversation about gender, gender identity, whether or not people can be on a spectrum, you know, of gender. And people get pretty up in arms on, and that is a real issue that we have in our society, right? That is worth talking about. So it kind of pushes back a little bit because, yeah, this is dumb. It is a toy. My sons have one. I have several, I guess, and a giant one. But, so on the one hand, you're kind of saying we have goofy priorities. But on the other, you would have to somehow own the idea that, like, but a lot of these people that want to have this conversation, it is an important conversation. So then maybe is it not misplaced priorities? Like maybe it seems like it on the one hand, but on the other, it is worth talking about, even if it is fucking Potato Head. Yeah, what's up, man?
Well, I was going to think about certain ones that people deny and stuff, like people deny the Holocaust.
You gonna bring up Holocaust denier?
Uh-huh. Sure.
He's gonna bum me out. I just said you're gonna bring up Holocaust deniers.
Well, I you know, I've never looked into why people did, but all I know is that people existed.
They've existed since the Holocaust happened, or I guess according to them, not. It's not limited to the Holocaust. You will get different people denying, especially like mass killings, tragedies, like the Uyghurs, which are this. The hell was that? Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought somebody dropped something. They're this Muslim group in China right now, and China as a government, but then also a lot of Chinese people, either in China or in other parts of the world who are of Chinese descent, have denied that China has absolutely murdered thousands upon thousands of these people. They put them in camps. They've, I just forgot the word. Man, I'm gonna sound like a child right now. They make them infertile when they let them out of the camp. They're like wild shit. This happened right now, by the way. Like this is right now. It's going on. And so a lot of the time, I guess yeah, you could sum it up as like deniers. A lot of the time, a big reason why stuff like that happens is like, well, you have an agenda, right? And to support that agenda or that worldview, whatever you're denying can't have happened, right? Or can't have happened at how people have reported it. And that's kind of the start to that line of thinking. What's interesting, most people anyway, who tend to go down a rabbit hole like that, glom on to other, I think what a lot of us anyway would consider wild or potentially dangerous. Like I hate to do it again. A lot of these people tend to be Holocaust deniers, for instance. Yeah. And again, the question would be, well, why? Why do these two things connect? You know, they're pretty different in a lot of respects, anyway. But yeah, it's all right. Enough conspiracy theories. Let's move off that. But sure, yes.
Dr. Seuss has been canceled too.
Oh, he hasn't. Okay.
Even though he's dead.
Well, he's pretty dead. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we talk about that for a second. So on the one hand, this is similar to Potato Head, right? Because it's like,
well, they pulled 6 of his books off the book.
yeah, what I was going to say, it's different though, too.
Yeah.
So when you see it in the headlines, or when you see somebody talk about it online, they usually talk about it just like that, right? It's very short, they canceled Dr. Seuss. You're like, wait, Cat in the Hat? Grinch? All that other BS? We got a lot of books. No. Right? So already, a question that presents itself here that hasn't really presented itself here, we, as a culture, have fundamentally misrepresented the conversation that's being had around this guy. He's not canceled. I don't know if you know this, that dude has a lot of books. More than 6. He has so many books after he died. I didn't know this until I became a parent. There are books written in the style and drawn in the style of Dr. Seuss that he did not write. Like they're put out by the same imprint. We have a couple. They're not as good, I'll tell you right now. If you read a shitty Dr. Seuss book, go to the first page, see who wrote it. Might not have been him. But my point is, there's way more Dr. Seuss than the 6 books, which, by the way, yeah, the publishing company, the people that own the rights to the books, decided not to publish anymore. No one came in and told them not to do it. No one said, like, no one canceled Dr. Seuss or even canceled those books.
Well, there's more to it, though.
Yeah, but real quick, it's a marketing decision. Like, that's what it is. People will not buy these books, and the ones that they canceled, the 6, I'd never heard of. But the more realistic depiction of the issue is the people that put these books out decided 6 of them weren't worth putting out anymore. They were pretty racist in some ways. In a way that when he did write them in the like 40s or whatever, like those books are that old, by the way. Dr. Seuss is that old. People were different back then. And that shit doesn't fly now. So people aren't going to buy it. And at best, people are going to be super upset. We just won't sell those 6. A company made that decision. But now, when it gets spun into a headline, it becomes, they canceled Dr. Seuss, right?
Well, they canceled him because of the books, and then he used to beat his wife, cheat on his wife when she had cancer, and then left her for his mistress when she died. Or right before she died.
You know a lot about some of this stuff. I didn't know those things. All right, well look, I'll tell you this. Part 1 of the conversation for me would be the misrepresentation of the issue, right? That is a thing that happens a lot. An offshoot of that might be, I guess, once you did some research, which, again, I have not looked into, because as soon as I realized people weren't talking about it on real terms, I was like, oh, well, that's dumb. And Part 2 might be how we seem to, I'm trying to think of a good way to.
He also hated children. His books were not intended.
Who doesn't? Children are fucking awful. That's real. No, you're not allowed to say that, especially if you're Dr. Seuss. Children are awful. Hey, the woman that wrote Goodnight Moon, I don't know if you know that, she hated kids. Hated the fact that that book was popular. Because she had to read it to kids. She hated kids. Because kids suck. You love your kids. You don't like other kids? Are you kidding me? They smell and they're rude. They're terrible. Get them out of here. Anyway, but what you're talking about, it is interesting how, and I guess it would vary on a case-by-case basis, but it does seem like a lot of the time, we seem to have a tendency very recently to have some kind of an issue, right? So in this case, Dr. Seuss, you feel one way or the other about what is apparently the issue, which we've already said isn't the real issue. But that's what people are focused on. And then now, we're going to go find other ammunition. This is a different conversation. That's not at all what we were talking about, right? As a people, as a Twitter people, we were worried about his books. But now people are saying, oh, but he was a bad guy too. Did he write a biography? Is Cat in the Hat like out there cheating on his hat? No. It doesn't, like, it has nothing to do with this, right? But it is interesting that, like, we feel like, again, I'm trying to think of a way to sum this up. There is a real thing nowadays that, like, we can dive into your life, and if anything isn't completely perfect, we can bury you for that too, right? That kind of brings me back maybe to this. It's like, it doesn't just get applied to like what someone has put out in the past. It definitely also gets applied to their life, you know? And it's always incomplete information. So for instance, Mrs. Seuss could have been an awful bitch. Like, it's possible. We don't know. We don't know, nor should we. That's their lives. They're both dead. It's kind of over. But here in the past couple years, we've decided, no, it's not over. It's never over. I did some research. I'm going to let you guys know we have ammunition now. That's interesting, right? Why do we do that? Again, I have theories, and we may talk about them later.
Like people aren't allowed to change. Like you do one thing, you're not allowed to change ever. You're stuck with that.
Yeah. So like one example, and we might segue here in a minute because we do have to do one other thing. But one example I can give you, this will happen, if not every year, like damn near every year. We are all nerds in our own way, okay? I'm a football nerd. I watched the draft. If you don't know what that is, or didn't know it was televised, congratulations, you have a life. I watched the draft. Almost every year, and I remember a couple years ago, this kid named, I think it was Ryan Switzer. He played for the Steelers for a while. I think he plays for the Cowboys now. That's immaterial. The point is, he was pretty good in college. So good, he was going to get drafted. And I think he still got drafted. But, like the night before or the night of the draft, you know, they're talking about, this kid's really good, he's going to go here, and all of a sudden it blows up on Twitter, and it ends up on TV, that when this kid was 13, okay? Ryan Switzer, he's a white kid, I don't know where he's from, but he's getting drafted into the NFL, so he's, 21, something like that. When he was 13, he posted a tweet that had the N-word in it. And the firestorm around that, and the sort of media scrum he dropped in the draft. Right? I'm not saying he should have used that word, but I am saying 13-year-olds are idiots. Anyway, it's kind of that conversation, like that, and that happens every year. The best part is, and again, I'm not saying he should have said the word, he was just quoting a song he liked. It was rap lyrics. He was like, this song's cool, and he tweeted it. But the question is now, should whatever you did when you were like 13, should you be made to answer for that throughout the rest of your life? You know what I mean? Most of us, when put that way, would say, well, no, probably not. I mean, come on, man. But it does seem like, again, with this idea in mind, more and more people are saying, yeah, you should be made to answer for everything you've ever done. And again, the question is like, well, what does that say about us that like that's our standard for people now? You know? Because that's new and wild. Anyway, we'll do one or two more. You guys can think of any. Maybe not a conspiracy theory. You're super plugged into this. I feel like you should put your phone down. But go ahead.
The Aunt Jemima, it's not a conspiracy theory. So you know the syrup, right?
Yeah.
And they had the lady's face on it.
Mm-hmm.
They took her face off.
Yeah.
Because it was apparently racist. It had like
yeah. And I don't know enough about it. I know about it. But yeah,
I saw the
like
original picture. She was like really dark. Like the lightest thing was her teeth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was a caricature. I mean, that one was kind of big. It wasn't as big as, well, maybe, I guess, recency bias. They seem bigger because it just happened.
Yeah.
That one, to me, got some pushback, but I don't think it was as big because I think more people were like, I don't know how old Aunt Jemima is as a brand, but it's...
I think it was in like the 1940s.
It's super old, right? And again, similar to Seuss anyway, it's like, not everything people thought in the 1940s is what we think now, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of people, for in that particular instance, were kind of a mind like, yeah, we should probably fix that. We should probably.
Like Uncle Ben's rice also.
What'd you say?
Uncle Ben's rice.
Yeah. Similar kind of deal, right? It's like, look, we get people did that in the past, but now it's So one way, all right. So we've been at least I've been kind of knocking this idea. It's almost like this is like a weapon we have nowadays. Sanitize might have been a word, or I mean they're the same thing, but we almost want to sanitize the past, whether that means actually going into somebody's past and erasing it, or nowadays, like kind of correcting bad decisions we feel like are bad that people made in the past. Do you know what I mean? And it seems like that's a double-edged sword. Like in a lot of cases, some of these brands, stuff like that, it makes sense. It's fine. And look, again, back to the Dr. Seuss example, it's 6 books that no one read anyway, right? Sure. But the double-edged sword of it is, it can go, like, where should the line be? Where should we stop? And again, as a culture, I don't know that we found that yet. So it seems like sometimes we go too far. And again, the question would be, well, why do we do that? Why do a lot of us feel like there is no line? We can take this as far as we want, right? Why are people driven to do that? But yeah, that works. Okay. Anything else? Cool. All right. Well, that went relatively well. Let's do another thing now. Oh, it just sprang to life all on its own. Okay, that's cool. Let me see. Can I turn you on? Maybe you turn it on. Oh, look at you. Okay. It says it's off. That's very interesting. All right, let's play with this for a moment. Yeah, well, okay, yeah. I wish I could turn those off. Anyway. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about research. Whatever you decide to do for this paper, right? You pick your text. You're going to have to do some research. The interesting thing about this paper is, at least most of the time, you don't really have a classic primary text in the way that we're used to, right? So, like if you wanted to do the Aunt Jemima thing, there's no one thing, like, so for instance, when we wrote about I'm Sorry, like we had a book, right? This is our primary text. For what we're talking about, all the examples you guys gave, there's all kinds of texts out there, like we're talking about ideas. You see what I'm saying? So I don't want you to think that you have to find like one text you can point to and say, this is my primary text, right? Your primary text in this case is the conversation that's going on around a particular issue or idea or movement or a bunch of crazy motherfuckers that don't think the Holocaust happened, anything like that, right? Like that is your primary text. What that means is you're going to have to find sources that help you talk about it. They're going to cite specific evidence or specific instances, some knowledge you need. And it's also going to be people making arguments about this stuff that you can engage in, right? So for instance, one of the first people, and popularly anyway considered maybe the first person to be all kinds of canceled on Twitter, is a woman named Justine Sacco. Before we go any further, I want to make a point. We're going to do research for this paper, as I've indicated several times now. The primary difference between a class like this and a class like 1102, which is after this one, 1102 is like more scholarly. This is bridging from high school to college. 1102 is like, well, you're in college now, let's go full tilt. So for this paper, I specifically designed it with the idea that you can use popular sources, okay? Does anybody not know what I mean when I say a popular source? Okay. Scholarly source is, and I'll show you guys where this is at. On most papers in your collegiate career, you will be expected to use a scholarly source. That's at the library, okay? You can go to the library, although I don't even know if they allow that right now. But there's also databases. Like, I would be surprised if there's nothing on this woman in the database. Database is also slow. Ooh. Oh, wait, well, Jesus. That's a lot of folks. Oh, because it looks for her name. Oh, that's going to be hard. Hang on. We don't have as much money as Google, so this stuff's a little slower. See, it's gonna find people with that name. I didn't even consider that. I wonder if you could. Actually, get rid of that. I think I saw one. Okay. This is, I mean, kind of scholarly. It's from the New York Times, but Justine Sacco. I am in anguish over a cavalier tweet. That's before. Yeah. So anyway, in most cases, for most papers, you would be asked to go to the different databases we have access to that your tuition pays for through the library, and these are like big articles written by like professors or people who think about this stuff a lot. And it's good that we have them. Those are valuable sources. But again, I built this paper, not to say that you can't use scholarly sources, but I built this paper with the idea that we would use popular sources. So I straight up just Googled this woman's name. And now I'm going to go through the results and kind of start thinking about the text in general, but also as I'm researching, what ideas are coming up? What do people seem focused on? That can also help me focus my research. You know what I'm saying? To begin with, I'm willing to bet anyway, most of you have no idea who Justine Sacco is. Is that correct? Sure. All right. Well, I've gone through this already because I do have to at least try to prepare for class. Grace, do you know who Justine Sacco is?
No.
Ah, nice. Okay. So I went through all these, and a lot of them are good for all kinds of reasons. But for this particular, I guess, conversation around this woman, I think it would be most helpful to see what I keep describing to you guys as the reaction. Okay? And there's an awesome, I think this is the right one. Yeah, this is it. So, to give you a quick rundown, and then I'll show you some specifics. This woman, back in, I think it was 2013. Yeah, 2013. Back when Twitter was relatively young, okay? It was a big deal, but not nearly as big as it is now. She sent a tweet, and she only had, like, some friends. Like, she wasn't, again, Twitter wasn't as big a deal, but she was a private person. She was not a celebrity before this. She tweeted something. One of her friends shared it to the effect of like, is this okay type of thing. Somebody else saw it from them, and it went viral. And you guys are probably familiar with that term. Also in 2013, because she got on a plane right after she sent this tweet, we didn't have internet on planes. So what that meant is her tweet went viral. The whole world had an opinion about this woman all of a sudden, and she had no idea. She was on a long flight. So the hashtag "Has Justine landed yet?" started trending as well. Legit, like, reporters got to the airport she was going to land at and waited on her. And she got off the plane, and they're starting to ask her questions, and she turns on her phone, and she's like, oh shit, type of thing. The reason I like this source, again, is it gives the play-by-play of all of that. So before we dive any further into this, just so you guys know what I'm even talking about, let's look at some of it. So, at 10 in the morning, she sent a tweet. Here it is. Can you guys see that at the top? Going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. Which, you know, not the best decision. Anyway, all right, so again, I like they give us all the specifics. She had 200 followers. Someone emailed it to somebody. So this guy posted it. He writes an article about it. Now they're talking about it on Twitter as of 1:30. Other reporters take notice. They're going to retweet it. People are reacting to it. Like, this is all a timeline of what happened. More people see it. You get things like, is this tweet real? Some people aren't sure. Like, this has got to be like almost like an Onion article type thing. You know what I'm saying? All right. What else? All right, now people are getting pissed. She should be fired. She's disgusting, racist. She's such a bitch. You get the idea. Some people are wondering if her account was hacked, right? And again, all this, she's in the air. She has no idea any of this is happening. This is the whole world talking about her without her knowing, but also importantly, I think, without her being able to offer any information, right? It's interesting, you see what happens. People get confused and then angry and then start spinning theories, right? In the absence of information, people will supply their own. And so this guy says, did this woman get hacked to have sent this, you know? All right, so now websites are picking it up. Now they figured out where she's going, or rather where she's from, which is South Africa. All right, this map, and I know it's kind of small for you guys, although all the red spots, that's where it's trending. You see mostly in the US, a lot in South Africa, which is where she's from, a lot in England. All right, and there's the hashtag, has Justine landed yet? Now people are tracking her flight. Trying to get to another. This guy says, I'm really busy tracking the flight of a woman on Twitter who made a racist joke, so no, I can't come to your party, and then the hashtag. Everybody's still talking about it. All right, trying to get through some of this. That's people's opinion. You get it. All right. Oh, somebody made a, wow. Okay. We gotta be near the end here. Some people are like, companies are chiming in. Aid for Africa chimes in, which is interesting as well because they're doing a good thing, right? But they're also like, well, since you guys are so concerned about AIDS in Africa, let's maybe donate some money, type of thing. People are making accounts under her name now. All of this is happening while she's on the flight. So again, she gets on the plane at 10. It's a longer flight, but still, like, this all happens over the course of one day. Okay. Landed at 11:20 Eastern. So yeah, damn long flight. She deleted all her accounts immediately. She lands, sees what has happened, and deletes all of it. Now she's on the news. She obviously gets fired. Some people are apologizing for how far it went. Then you see people saying, Justine Sacco was the victim of a witch hunt. She was the target of a liberal media campaign to limit freedom of speech in America. So now all of a sudden, now all of a sudden the conversation gets way bigger than her, right? Kind of like the potato head issue. We're almost done. There's all the places it was trending again on a different map. Here's how much she was mentioned, and then there's the day that she made that joke. Then the next day, she issued an apology through, like, I guess a reporter that came to talk to her. And that's how it is. Now, why do I show all that to you? If you wanted to, for instance, I'm going to compare this to Potato Head because it feels like pretty similar in a way. She's Potato Head in this question. She says a thing that she says in her apology she should not have said, right? Then she gets on a flight. So she basically says a thing she doesn't realize in the moment she shouldn't have said. And then she does the equivalent of throws her phone in the bushes and doesn't go find it for hours and hours and hours. And the world takes notice. And the world kind of decides what she meant and what should be done to her, right? And it explodes. It explodes. And then hours and hours later, she goes into those bushes. She's like, oh, there's my phone. And she finds it and goes, oh. And has to deal with that, right? It got politicized toward the end. Like I showed you that one example. Plenty of people who, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but don't know anything about this woman other than one tweet, okay, are saying things like she should be fired, she's a bitch, fuck her, all this stuff. One tweet. So one question that springs to mind, and then I'm going to come back to how you would use the source. But already, my immediate question is, man, that says a really interesting thing about us, that we can take so little information about a person, right? We know she's white, she's a PR executive from South Africa, and she made a really bad joke on Twitter one time. Those are all that we know about her in this article. And then everybody's opinion of her gets formed off of that little information, right? That's interesting, because I think we do that. Not just for her, but for maybe every situation. We seem to form complete opinions of people and places and things based on like next to no information. I kind of wonder why that is. That would be something to look into, right? The other way I would use this source is, I mean, this is what BuzzFeed News is made for, right? Giving me a Twitter timeline of the very start and then just through the day how this thing escalated, right? I wouldn't quote this much, but anytime I needed like to reference, okay, at what point did this really kick off, or like what were people thinking about her or saying about her, maybe partway through, I could come back here and go through the timeline and figure that out, right? Like, this is tracking the conversation around her tweet in real time. That's wild, right? I would wonder, I mean, this is in 2013, but I would wonder if they do something similar for, say, Potato Head or whatever, right?
They do that now for people who post videos of them saying like a racial slur.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, they'll find their school, they'll email the principal, they'll email the job.
Oh, they'll dox them.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's
sometimes they release their phone number and address, and I'm like, y'all trying to get somebody killed.
Yeah. And again, like, I'm not defending what she says. At best, it was pretty stupid. But also, it is interesting that, again, that we decide we can kind of, it's almost the reason, the reason, like, the cops are always mad at Batman is because he's a vigilante. It's like, dude, that's not your job. Like, you don't get to decide, right? It's similar. It's like, well, why all of a sudden do we have the right, do we think we can shit on a person like that, right? For the worst tweet she's ever had, like whatever worst tweet you've ever had, we take you at your lowest bar and say, that's you. It's like, I don't know if that's fair, right? But again, that's not, the paper's not that. The paper is, what does it mean that we do that to people? Yo, what's up?
That kind of reminds me of just maybe another example.
Sure.
This was just kind of, because I remember I was, I guess, 8th grade. You remember the whole thing of the guy spray painting the American flag and putting it in front of the school door or something? It's like a senior prank.
No.
Well, it blew up like 2 or 3 years ago, and I just remember, it was actually my high school, and a bunch of, I just remember everybody in like my middle school, I didn't even know about it, and everyone just was like, oh, they should be home. Some people were like, oh, it's not a big deal, and some people were like, they should be home from the streets, and it's like,
He spray painted the flag, or he spray painted a flag? I'm not sure.
They took the, it was a senior prank, they took the flag and spray painted like class of 2019.
Okay.
And somebody just, I mean, it exploded. I mean, it was like all over America. And I was like,
well,
and then there were some people that were like, you know, there's obviously all different views. A lot of people were like, oh, well, it doesn't matter, it's just a thing. And then some people were like, well, they should be home. And
I mean, obviously something like that is going to be super politicized, like immediately.
Yeah.
All these texts are different. So in that particular case, and a little bit maybe with Justine Sacco actually, because 2013, I mean, I was in college, I wasn't, you know, super on top of stuff. I would be interested. Another question might be, who covers that story and how? Because I, for instance, have a sneaking suspicion of why maybe I didn't know about that at all. And it probably has a lot to do with the kinds of news outlets that would cover it with a lot of enthusiasm. I probably wasn't watching.
Well, I mean, it was like, I just remember thinking, because I didn't even know about the thing.
Yeah.
I actually knew the guy, but I didn't even know that any of it happened. And, And I just remember all these like kids that could barely, like, I don't know, all these kids that I knew that weren't even able to drive or nothing.
Yeah.
Had social media and they just exploded. And then my teacher was like, okay, y'all, we're not talking about that today.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, a lot of kids, and I can only say this because I teach a lot of them. A lot of kids, especially early in their adult lives, so like 16, 17, 18, back when you were an adult, you know, in the early 20th century, you like work the farm now. Those people tend to just parrot their parents. Like you don't, a lot of, so again, I would just say, an interesting question would be how certain phenomena gets politicized, but also how it gets politicized via certain media outlets. And my theory would be, given the particulars, again, the fact that I had never heard of it before just now kind of helps tell me where it was reported on and how. But anyway, sure, similar. All right, real quick, I want to show you another source. So again, this is another popular source. This is Vox. They have a little more cachet than a BuzzFeed News, okay? But both are fine for this. I also, just to make it clear, I went through you have the Washington Post, which is a great, New York Times, like Rolling Stone. Everybody was, the Guardian's great. John Ronson's really good too, actually. He writes about just social media reactions, I guess. And again, like our whole paper, like that's John Ronson's career. Like, what does any of this say about us? If you happen to find a guy like that, that's what he's talking about. So I would probably look at that later. But I want to show you one more source. So that was in 2013. That was when the thing happened. They were tracking it that day all the way until Justine did land, right? And that's wild. And that would be useful to me to think about the initial reaction, okay? This source, I'm gonna have to find the year real quick, was written in 2018, okay? So 5 years after the fact. She was fired in 2013, but she got rehired 5 years later, okay? And what's interesting to me, I mean, it talks about, this is a pretty short article. A lot of popular sources you guys will appreciate are shorter. This one's kind of short. Most of this article goes back into kind of what happened on that day. That's not super useful to us because we got that with the other source, okay? But one thing I like here is that they ask her about it. And she gives what I think is a really good quotation. I'm gonna read it and then I want to talk to you guys for a second about it. Because again, all we're trying to get right now with these different sources is different perspectives on whatever the thing is we're studying, okay? So again, all the reactions we got from 2013, from that day, that's a couple different, but that's one kind of perspective, right? This is who this woman is, or this is what people are trying to make her seem to be, right? Like we get to see that whole, I say discussion, maybe argument is a better term, but we get to see all that. This is 5 years later, things have cooled off significantly. This is what she says well after the fact when they ask her about it. She says, "To me, it was so insane of a comment for anyone to make. I thought there was no way anyone could possibly think it was literal. Unfortunately, I'm not a character on South Park or a comedian, so I had no business commenting on the epidemic in such a politically incorrect manner on a public platform. To put it simply, I wasn't trying to raise awareness of AIDS or piss off the world to ruin my life. Living in America puts us in a bit of a bubble when it comes to what is going on in the third world. I was making fun of that bubble." So she claims that what she was trying to say in her joke is, look at how unaware we are in America. Look at how, like the whole "I'm white," she's basically saying that's what people think. She was being sarcastic, is her claim. Now, whether or not that changes anybody's perspective or opinion on what she sent out in 2013, okay? It is interesting to me that no one considered this possibility, right? That she was saying what she said to make fun of people who think like that. You see what I'm saying? And especially when I found that quotation, I went back and read her tweet. I was like, I mean, that does make sense. I could see, like she name dropped South Park. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. Like, I know you know what it is, but I don't know if anybody's actually watched it. They do shit like that all the time. They do wild shit like that all the time, actually. And she even makes an interesting point there, which is like, it's almost like we accept ideas like that or jokes like that from certain sources, but we won't accept it from others. And again, the question becomes, well, like, why? What does any of this say about us that no one considered that maybe she was trying to make a point, right? Like, that's really interesting too. So I'd absolutely use this source 5 years later. You see what I'm saying? This is a whole other part of the conversation to think about. Does that make a little bit of sense? I'm going to go ahead and say no one can write about Justine Sacco, by the way, because I gave you this example, just like I'm sorry, okay? So that's two people that really screwed up that you can't write about. But there's plenty of others, right? And there's other conversations, there's other things to think about. I will ask real quick, though. We got a little bit of time, and I'm going to really fumble with these, let maybe Topple do it. Nice. Okay. What do you guys think of that quotation from her? A better word might be explanation. Like, this is what she claims she was thinking way back when. Does that change your opinion of her at all?
Yeah. I think she offered a great explanation of why she wrote that. I mean, if you look at all like the adult comedy shows, they do the same stuff and they don't have to apologize for it because I guess people just automatically take it as a joke. I guess she was trying to make it seem as a joke, but not everybody caught it as a joke.
Yeah. Well, and again, part of the issue too is, and I know they've expanded it since then, but Twitter initially, what, 140 characters, is that the number? Something like that? You don't really have a lot of room for explanation. Like, the whole... So even that, the fact that our most popular mode of communication is inherently vague, right? Like, inherently general is interesting. Because the show she name drops, I mean, one episode is 20 some odd minutes long. Like, you got time to make sure everybody understands that it's a joke and what have you, you know? So that even says something about us. That you could argue we prefer I didn't know this was a thing, by the way. My wife is a little more tapped in to some of this stuff. She's in like Facebook groups and whatnot. I don't do that. I don't know how anyone has time for that. The whole too long didn't read phenomenon. Are some of you familiar with this? If somebody posts a long story or a long article or whatever, I think it goes at the end, maybe. You say TLDR, and then you give like a 2-sentence summary. So we're acknowledging as a people, if we see a long thing, I'm not reading that, that's too long. If you go to the bottom, some people will sum it up for you, right? So we've already decided as a culture, I'm not going to get all the information. I'm not going to get all the facts. Just give me the really short version, right? That says something about us too. Anyway, your hand was up, go ahead.
I was going to say, it kind of also shows the fact that, I mean, it's just another example of, like you said, people don't want to hear all the information. It's almost like, people, like you said, don't want to hear all the information. They'd rather immediately jump to something. They'd rather, like, I don't want to say belong to a group, but it's like they want to start this whole rant, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I mean, in a way, you're kind of, you sound a little bit like Ansari with that bit that we watched last time, the pizza, the swastika pizza that didn't exist, right? He talks about programmed responses. Yeah, well, it's a chicken and egg thing. Are you guys familiar with this metaphor? Like, what came first, chicken or the egg? And it's like, well, no one knows. Similar thing here. It's like, on the one hand, you could consider the idea that a lot of people react immediately to a tweet like that because they're already conditioned politically or socially. You know, again, we're talking about Ansari's whole groupthink notion in that bit. we're conditioned to respond in a way that we're always going to, so you can fire it off immediately. The chicken and egg thing real quick comes in. I kind of wonder, that's true, but I also kind of wonder how much of it might be how platforms like Twitter or what have you, they also demand quick response. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you want to be one of the first people that if you see this, you want to respond and make sure, like, oh, I'm at the top of the I don't even know what it's called on Twitter. Facebook calls it a wall. But you're like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's some level of, we want it to be quick. So our culture also has decided, like, we've demanded no time to ingest the information, right? Like, we want you to be fast. And does that mean that we're not going to have time to think about things? Again, so it's a chicken, like, on the one hand, you have program responses. On the other hand, we don't want you to come up with your own response, right? So I don't know which one would be first, but they both work together. Here and then here.
Oh, I was just going to say, dang, I forgot. Never mind.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. It'll come to you in a second. It'll come to you in a second. Yeah.
I think the reason people kind of make up their own ideas or like jump to conclusions is because they feel they need to be right so they can rub it in somebody else's face. If they jump to a conclusion with the little information they have and end up being right, they feel like they're always right.
Well, what's interesting there too is, again, we make fun of conspiracy theorists, but it seems like, at least in a lot of ways, people do that, right? What you're saying. And then if they are presented with information that's contrary, it seems like a lot of people won't change their initial position. So now we just have a whole lot of people who leap to a conclusion, and if they find out later that, like, that rock they leapt to in the stream is, like, sinking, they're like, no, it's not. It's like, dude, I can see it disappearing under your feet. You're like, mm-mm. Right? That's interesting too. Again, my question to all this, I'm going to say it a lot, is like, what does any of that say about the kind of people we are now? That's like the mode we live in. You know what I'm saying? Do you remember it?
Yeah, and I remember when we watched them on I'm Sorry, do you remember I don't remember, was it the Washington Post or whatever, the woman that was talking about them too and the bigger issue?
I don't know. What are you talking about right now?
The video we watched about I'm Sorry.
Okay, yeah, she was in the Washington Post, yeah.
Well, when she was talking about it, she said, why can't, now that we've discussed it, why can't we leave these two people their lives and get back to the actual issue?
To the bigger question.
Yeah, it's like, why it kind of shows us, like, we as a society, like, we just find it our job to butt in other people's business and just kind of, like, put ourselves in their lives.
Well, what's interesting too, I mean, the point you're kind of making to reapply that idea to the Justine Sacco deal, she claims she was trying to make a bigger point, right? So if that woman made another video about her, she would basically say, look, what this woman said was obviously very stupid and not a good idea in any way. But now that she's done that and definitely been, like, punished for it in all kinds of ways, shouldn't we move on to this bigger question of, I don't know, all the people that need help in Africa, for instance? Like, isn't that, right? Like, whether or not you believe her explanation, doesn't it raise that larger conversation? But we stop at that. Almost always, right? Like, the conversation dies at, wait, I'm going to have to do stuff or, like, think about, no, I'm gonna say what I think about this woman, and then I'm gonna go to Starbucks or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Again, the question is like, what does it say about us that we do that? All right. I'm gonna reiterate one thing, and then I'm gonna remind you about your homework, and I'm gonna let you go. All right. So when it comes to this paper, whatever you choose, right? You got to figure out your specific text, whether it's an unfortunate tweet somebody sent, or somebody gets canceled, or, you know, you talked a lot about brands today. That's on the table. Conspiracy theories, any number of, we didn't even really cover movements, right, online. There's plenty of those. Any of that's fair game, okay? You pick one, though. And then you just got to do some research, some popular sources. People are going to have different ideas. First of all, you want to find different ideas. I highly discourage anyone from finding 3 or 4 sources that all agree. That's not going to help you very much. Okay? Because either that means whatever you're looking up isn't really worth your time because we're all like, yeah, definitely this way, right? Or it's going to make writing the paper harder for you, to be honest. Entertain some different voices, some different perspectives. You might not agree with any of them. Again, that's fine because that's not what our paper is about, right? We are thinking about the reaction. We are thinking about the conversation around this thing. How it builds, what it turns into, and what any of that says about us. Whether it's our priorities or our perspectives, again, as a people, a society, a culture. That's what we're out to figure out in this paper. When it comes to your homework, and again, I'm a little bit worried given how quiet some of you were. 2 responses to the discussion board that was due today, okay? And if you haven't done the initial post, you maybe do that, right? Because it asks you some, like basically what we did today with the brainstorming. That's all the discussion board is, okay? Also, proposals are due next time. This is the document where you explain to me, all right, I'm picking this, I'm gonna write about it, and here's why. I'm gonna approve that, provided you do a good job, right? The best way to think about the proposal is this is the start to your paper, the thing you're turning in on Wednesday, right? So think about it a little bit. Grace, did you have a hand up?
No.
Oh, okay. Revisions are also, I believe, due today. Okay. If you haven't done those, you should. But anyway, that's all I got. Don't forget about SI, which is today at 12:30? 1?
Yes.
Well, if you got there at 12:30, you'd be early. But anyway, it's at 1. Thursday's online. All right, that's all I got. I'll see you guys Wednesday. Thank you.